Welcome back to Season 5 of the True Blue Conversations podcast with your host, Adam Bloom. G'day, podcasters. Before we get underway with True Blue Conversations, just wanted to give a huge shout out to our friend and sponsor, the Warrior U podcast, hosted by Bram Connolly. Bram is a former Special Forces commander, best-selling author, popular podcast host, and human optimization pioneer. He has an authentic style and the unique ability to not only motivate, but also take people on a journey of self-discovery. Through the Warrior U podcast, Bram interviews guests in a bid to explore all things human optimization, resilience, leadership, and coffee. His book, The Commando Way, a Special Forces Commander's Lessons for Life, Leadership and Success, is available now on amazon.com.au. So from Adam Bloom and all of us here at True Blue Conversations, a big shout out to the Warrior U podcast, Bram Connolly, and his new book, The Commando Way, out now.
G'day, welcome back to True Blue Conversations. I'm Adam Bloom. Today, I am joined by a great mate of mine, and I'm recording live from his beautiful home. And his story is just epic. This is part 1 of a 3-part episode. And this guest served for 20 years and 3 days in the 2nd Commando Regiment. And he has joined us today to talk about his multiple deployments and his long and distinguished career and his life after service. Craig Hamberger, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me, mate.
Mate, it's an absolute honour and a privilege, and we've been talking for a long time now, mate, and to actually finally sit down and record this, mate, it's great to actually finally get it recorded. And mate, before we get into your career, let's go back to a young Craig and let's talk about you as a young fella, what we like at school, sport, and family.
Okay, yeah. Well, firstly, it took us about 6 months to get here, on and off. You had something, I had something, surgeries, work commitments, everything else. So thank you, and thanks for getting out around Australia and recording the stories that need to be told. All right, myself as a young fella, I grew up as an army brat. My dad was an engineer in the army. Born in Brisbane. Moved around Melbourne, then went to Sydney, then my mum and dad separated, and then from there, me, my brothers, my mum, and stepdad, once that all happened, moved up to Newcastle, and that's where I sort of found myself as a young fella, maybe 5, 6, just living the life.
So for you, obviously, like, you getting around and really at a young age too, I guess, facing your first bit of adversity with your mum and dad splitting up.
Yeah, going all the way back. I mean, even as a kid, I used to, like, if my brothers were doing something, I wanted to do it. And I wanted to do it better. Even as a young fella, I had my training wheels taken off my bike at, maybe 2, 3, pardon my language. My dad's like, you can't do it. You won't be able to do it. I'll do it. Anyway, so I had my training wheels off, and down the hill I came. I didn't know where the brakes were, so I used a brick wall. I ended up blinding myself for 3 days and had eggs on my head for like another 10 years. Oh, mate, it was nuts. That was just me, though. Get in.
Yeah, get it done.
Crack on.
So, good at sport, mate?
Yeah, thank God. And it was my saviour. It was quite funny. I was sitting thinking about this, as you do before you do a podcast of a journey. I wasn't allowed to play contact sport until I was 13, 14. So, I used to play lawn bowls as a young fella. So I played pennants, so with all the old fogies and, down the locals, and P&M soup after lawn bowls and... but I was massive into my athletics I got into it from about, I reckon, 11, 12, and then automatic, will to want, be fast, be and I really did enjoy it. But it's a very lonely sport. So even though I toured through Asia, 15 I think I was. I think that was my last sort of I'm over this sort of individual sport, and then went into play footy for my local side, and then junior nights, although I only played half a game, and then from there, Lakes United junior, which was amazing. Played grand final, like people like Willie Mason, the Davies twins. Not many people know them, but locally,
They're big names, yeah.
They're just good blokes, So and then tried my hand at Super League in '96. I think was the year that it didn't get
97, up. 97, I think it was.
97 is when it actually got up, but 96 they actually had trials all the way up.
Oh, right.
And then it went bust.
Yep.
I think it was 96. No, 90. It was 97. 97. And I was 15, and I made it to the last cut, which I was happy with. Being a 15-year-old playing under 17, so that was all right.
Yeah, and you're not a big tall bloke.
No, super fast though. Back in the day I was running, mid 11s, low 11s.
Yeah, right.
But and I think from the age of I've been this tall, so I'm 5'3" now. I've been this tall since I was 12, and you just didn't grow. And obviously. You can be fast, you can be... I was a great communicator, I was good at defence, but you're going up against, giants.
And were you big? No,
I was 50 odd kilos.
Yeah, right.
But catch me if you can sort of thing. Like, even at 15, I was the fastest in the Hunter Mariners. I remember going to a barbecue with Robbie Ross and a couple of the A-graders and playing touch, and they had the skill.
You had the pace.
I had the pace. As a 15-year-old, just
get out of my way.
Well, no, catch me, not really get out of my way. So, but anyway, I mean those are life lessons learnt, and I went to a trial when I realised that I wasn't going to make it, and not through skill, just through it's not what you know, it's who you know sort of mentality. I went down to a trial with I think it was East. In 99, killed the trial, absolutely destroyed it, and they said, no, we've got your position filled. I'm like, okay. So, you got to look at your life and go, okay, well, I've got to find something else to do, because this is just not going to be where it's at, so...
So you've got brothers and sisters?
I have two brothers. My middle brother lives in Melbourne. He owns a restaurant down there, very successful, very driven, very family-orientated, and then my other brother... is in the Navy. He is my eldest brother, and he's done 28 years of service.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and he's just deployed. He's done, out of the 28 years, I think he'll tick over 13 years at sea. I don't understand if people can fathom that. That's like a prison sentence.
Yeah.
Time served at sea.
And because they're not big ships.
Well, even if they are, you're still in a coffin,
tin
a tin can, mate, and climbing up and down those stairs, and it's a way of life though, and he just loves it.
Yeah, right.
So he's married, he's got one little daughter, and he's just cracking on doing what he's doing.
So the military history side, you've got a rich military history with your dad, but do you have any other relatives that served before?
I've got my uncle. I'll bring it up. My dad said to me, "You didn't talk about this and you didn't talk about that. You have a rich history." And I'm like, "Yes, Dad. Okay, all right." So I'll bring it up. So, but I'm just trying to find where it is. He, obviously my granddad, he built aircraft, I believe, for the military back in the day. His brother, Uncle Harry. He served against the Germans. He escaped 3 times, got 2 military medals. I like you can just imagine the fun he would have had escaping. And I mean, I look at it differently to how people go, "Oh, he escaped 3 times," and like just the cunningness to be able to do that. And,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then his brother, he was on I think he was the second or the first replacement on the Western Front, I think. If I get it wrong, my dad will kill me. But like it was a journey. Where is it? It might be here in this one. And Dad just like, you got to make sure you talk about Larry and all the other relatives that served. I'm like, yeah, I get it, but there's a long lineage of history. Like my dad's brother, he was a navigator on a ship.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
Just heaps. There's a very long lineage of history, which is funny because I never actually wanted to join the military. It was never anything because I'm so in the moment sort of person. I never what am I going to do in 10 years? And it's funny how it came about. So
yeah, well, let's talk about that, mate. Because as you say, like you come from your dad being in the military and. Like as you say, you're a man of the moment, and how did that come about? Like obviously, because at that time, peacetime army, like there wasn't a lot going on in the world. Well, we're about to get into the next 20 years of your career, but tell me how that came about.
So me and my mate Blue, we weren't the most astute at school.
I don't think many are, mate.
No, I know. Well, it's funny. Most, I'll say most, military are the same, and that's only because they hadn't found their way yet and they hadn't found what their purpose and that was, and that's how I sort of look at it. Everyone I talked to that struggled at school was, I didn't want to be at school, but once they find that they want to do something, or especially like be in the military, then they find their way and they just
excel at it.
Yeah. So we went into the recruiting office in at Newcastle, and we're sitting down with the recruiter, and he's like, you guys aren't the smartest fish in the tank. Your grades are not good enough to join the military. And I'm like, wow, okay. Not even to be infantry? And he goes, no, not even to be infantry.
Wow.
So, I mean, yeah, you take it in your stride, you young fellow, what do we do? So we went to our local TAFE, and for 3 months, full-time, we got our Year 10 certificate done again, and then... went back in. I think we definitely went in separately, and then he goes, didn't even really look at my scores or my grades. He goes, you're committed, you're in.
So is that for you the first time you think you found proper purpose, like of what you wanted?
Not even yet.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I had an awesome work ethic. So like even going through high school, I was working at any one stage 2 jobs, and just because that's what I wanted to do. I had a good work ethic. I just not in the classroom. I was working McDonald's, unloading trucks in the morning, 4 till 7 on a Monday morning before going to school. And unloading a truck full of McDonald's stock. It's all frozen goods and everything else. So you're 3 hours of just into it.
Yep.
And then I'd work as a dishwasher at my brother. He was in a cafe, and just doing odd jobs. And even though they were very minor jobs,
the work ethic's there.
Work ethic's there, and I didn't even want to be the best at anything. I just had a good work ethic. So I just did that, and then the military. I didn't really want to join because my stepfather and my dad, and at that time, I didn't like either of them. My stepdad used to beat me. He was just a pig of a man, and he'd do it all behind my mum's back. And he was, just my dad, my mum separated, and, he went through a journey with all his injuries and back injuries from the military. And then he got addicted to codeine, and so it's just you you want someone to look up to, and that just wasn't how it was happening. But, you know, when my mate said, let's have a go and let's do it, and that was just the next step, the next phase of, my life journey.
So you join in 1999.
Yep, October 26th.
And then you head down to Kapuka. What do you remember of Kapuka?
Funny. I remember driving through the gates. I remember one of the blokes who ended up being in the room across from me, his aftershave was like, it's just one of those aftershaves. You're like, wow, it's
got a distinct smell. You
it's
remember
like
for life.
how many bottles you got in your bag, mate? Because you're putting a bottle on every day, sort of.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I remember getting off the bus and like the instructors there, look, get off that, look, on the bus, get off, let's go, and all your stuff comes out, and then they even before you're separated, like they stripping all your gear, and people had like pocket knives and like knives in general because they thought that they'd be able to use their own knives, and I don't know what their mentality was.
Anyone take their golf clubs? I've heard that there's a golf course there.
I don't remember that. I remember a couple of people being like, look at this, what the hell is, like the instructors, and you're just standing going, what is going on? Like, it is full on. And then from there, marched up into your space, because we got there in I think it was after lunch, maybe afternoon. All right, no dramas, this is your room, there's your bed. Next morning you're up, single file, up to the hairdressers, shave your head. You know what I mean? It's just like, hey, and then
so shock and awe, really.
Boot camp started.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It was like, okay, PT session straight up. Just shaking you out. This is it. Expectations. I remember the making your bed lesson was a full lesson, and you know, if your bed wasn't done right, and then like you'd spend all like the bed lesson was like an all day event.
Oh, what?
Well, because it had to be perfect before, so everyone's bed had to be perfect.
Yeah, right.
So, you know, like how the angles were, your hospital corners. So the discipline comes into it, and then you're learning that, and then, you know, like, oh, you got to go and get all your issues, and you're getting all your uniforms, your slouch hats, you know, everything just getting done. And then you just go through the process, and you're on the drill square, and, you know, like, shin height with your boots, the toes up, and I really enjoyed the discipline of it. I really enjoyed the structure of it. I didn't really feel the pressure as such. I just wanted to perform. I suppose you're in that environment, and you got no other choice. So that's what you're doing.
So did you have? How long was your Kapuka? Were you 12 weeks or were you?
No, I was 6.
Yeah, right.
6 weeks. 6 weeks at Kapuka. 12 platoon, which was funny because they were Commando platoon.
Yeah, right.
Like the mascot and all. The 12 platoon were double diamonds.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so that was, and then the other platoon was 13 platoon upstairs. Yeah.
So did you have good instructors, or were you not? Because I know Kapuka's you've got transport, you've got catering, you've got all different.
My secco was a transporter. I can't think of his name, but he was really good. He'd get us in, and you know, really tried to mentor us. You know, and then there was grunts. Just a broad range of instructors. I think we had one female section commander as well. But it's funny, one of the real green seccos, I think he came from 3RER, he ended up coming to the regiment. So I went to Commando in 2000. He did his Singo time, and then I think he got out and then got back in. I don't know. And then he ended up coming to Commando as well.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then he ended up being an officer after it. So he went through the ranks, and then I think he got to sergeant, and then he transferred across. So one of my original Kapuka instructors ended up being at the regiment with me.
Wow.
Yeah, in the same company too.
So, because did you always know that you were you going infantry, or is that what you wanted to do, or?
Infantry was me, only because that's what me and my mate wanted to do. Again, I wasn't one of those. I mean, I used to play shoot 'em ups out in the backyard with my brothers, and you know, I was always that way inclined. But I never looked into the history of it, or like I said, I'm in the moment. I'm not that sort of person that daydreams or sort of lives in the past even. So I mean, that's probably a luxury now, being out. But yeah, I thought infantry. Why not? Give it a crack.
So you finished your 6 weeks, and did the family come down and see you march out?
Yeah, my sister-in-law will hate me if I don't mention this, but my mum, she was brought down by my now sister-in-law. At the time, she was just my brother's girlfriend. And then she went to the march out, both there and at Singleton. And that was... Mum saw me off getting on the bus, and then she came and saw me do the march out. Yeah.
So for you, obviously you mentioned in the moment, proud moment marching out of Kapuka, like you'd actually accomplished something that you set out to do?
I remember the march out, but it's, I don't know, it's just, okay, yeah, proud, but not like, I didn't get any awards because, like, I was obviously aiming for them, but the guy that got the PT award ended up going to the SAS, and I was probably second or third to him because, it's funny, that Kapuka engineers, there was a couple of transporties, and then the rest of us were grunts. Either went to the grunts or went to Commando, then some of them went to the SAS. So, like, a very good bunch of lads and girls. And I didn't get the Soldiers Award because the guy that ended up coming to the regiment was a section commander, and you used to go through and have to lock up your lockers, but then you had to have trust in your oppo, and it's his day to lock the lockers. And I remember, I'm like, did you lock the lockers? Because I saw him walking in and checking all the rooms, and he goes, I think so. And then he just walks out with the bayonet, and I'm like, that's my bayonet. And I'm like, yeah. So then I got extras for not having my locker locked. And then I just knew I wasn't in the running for best soldier at Kapuka. And in the moment, you want to be that best, in hindsight. Like, after my whole journey, it's like, wow, that was just Kapuka. Next step. But
so you finish your time at Kapuka, and then you go to Singleton, mate. And what are your memories of Singleton, and what was the toughest part for you?
I was in Kapyong platoon out the back. Again, only 6 weeks, but we got there in November, late November. So we did 2 weeks, and then we went on Christmas break. But I remember just the intensity changed. Like, the bayonet assault course was phenomenal. I actually embraced it all. I found the marching and the force marching really, really hard because, being short, big army, it's left, right marching. So you've got to keep step. You've got to stride out. So I really struggled managing that side of it. But that was about it. Like, I love the ops course, the bayonet assault course, really embraced, even the ropes, the pool, everything, even though I wasn't the best swimmer, but you're in the moment, sort of, so it was really good. But it's funny, one of the previous, and he ended up being my platoon commander who got a MG in 06, he was at Duntroon at the time. And we're both the same age, so we're 19 at. He ended up coming to do Singleton, so he did the first 2 weeks with us. Or he might have done the whole lot, but he ended up being the CEO of 2 Commando.
Yeah, right.
And a mate of mine, and he got his MG in 06 in Afghanistan. So he was my platoon commander. We did Singleton together. Just odd how the world goes around. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you march out, in Singleton, did you have a choice of where you wanted to go?
You put down your preferences.
Yeah, your preferences. Of where.
Yeah.
So for you, where were you heading?
I wanted to go north. I wanted to go to 1 or 2 area, because especially after that, all you're hearing is, 1 and 2 is where it's at. I don't know if 5-7 was still around. I think 5-7 had just been disbanded. And now we have 5 RR and 7 RR separate in their own locations. But yeah, 1 or 2, I didn't mind. That was my preference. I didn't really know too much about 3RR, even though it was parachute. And that was where I wanted to go, but we all ended up going to Commando, or 4RR.
So at that stage, 4RR Commando, they re-raised it the year before? So.
No, 96 or 97 they did the selection. So Bravo Company was pretty much full when I got there in Valentine's Day 2000.
Beautiful day.
Yeah, yep.
And for you, so you march in and, like, what was that like getting to 4, and what was happening at the regiment at that time when you marched in?
Yeah, so rocking up, getting off the buses, again, young, and then just green hats everywhere and just fit, staunch. I mean, some of the guys there were like size of houses.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and it looked like they eat rocks, especially back in the day, coming out of there. So they've just done, 96, 97, 98, 99, all those. So Bravo Company was pretty much full. Or actually it was full. It was a full functioning commando company. So when we rocked up, the first lot of us went to Charlie Company. And then we just got put into platoons, sections, and then from there we started doing what they call a 16-week, pretty much a shakeout, see who was ready to go on selection. You're talking 19-year-olds straight out of IETs. So literally the first, if you look at it, without intentionally, the first direct entry, because didn't go to a regiment, went straight to 4RR, which was 4RR Commando. And just straight into the 16 weeks of, some days it was 2 PT sessions a day and that's all you do. But those PT sessions were like intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then environmental training, underground tunnels, the creek, the Holsworthy Creek in the winter. Oh my God. Doing stores carries, you're freezing. It's just building that mentality and the methodology of being in the environment. Yeah, definitely.
Well, for what had come later on in your deployments
definitely.
It was conditioning you, and at that point, because you were at you were fit, but this was a whole nother level.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with the pack marching again, even though I passed out at Singo and I got through it was just a different speed. It was a different tempo. It was a different intent. We got there in 2000 and not only were we doing the 16 weeks, we were doing prep for the Olympics because we were the outer cordon for the Olympics. So we were doing the DAT course, which was the right course back in the day, getting pepper sprayed. And that was, you're talking old school pepper spray. So I took the skin off the top of my eyelids. One of my ended up being one of the RSMs at at this time. He was one of the maybe sergeants. I'm guessing. No, he was a corporal. You had to partner up, and you have a bucket of water. Once you get sprayed, you go to the bucket of water. Well, he would rather drown, so you had to pull him out. And then, because your sinuses are emptying, and you just have to chuck another bucket of water underneath your head, and then he just wants to get back in the water because the water's the only thing that's saving him. Yeah. So then you got to pull him out, hey, breathe. The pepper spray was that bad. People forgot to breathe. It was nuts. And so once you'd done that, you go through buckets of water. So you got someone just freshening up buckets of water because your sinuses are just emptying. There's just snot everywhere. Right. And the other person's just pulling him out. You've got to breathe, mate. You've got to breathe. He's like, no, get me back in the water. I was like, it was just insane. And I remember spending that afternoon once I'd got done and my eyes, I sat in the shower on my back on the floor with the shower going, with my eyelids just open. I'm talking maybe 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't go home. I just because you can't drive. You could barely. The pain was, it's like sandpaper on your eyeballs. And the old school pepper spray was just intense. Yeah, but we were getting tasered as well, so we did like taser, because the methodology back in the day was hey, you're going to do this to someone, so you need to understand the impact and what's going to happen. So once you get tasered, you do like this end of course validation where we went up against 3 area. So they did us, we did them. So we both were the cordon for the Sydney Olympics. So they were the enemy first. But so how they did it was they froze all these bags of oranges. So you're talking like projectiles coming at you. Flour bombs were made into concrete bombs. So they mix their own concrete with water. So the flour with water in balloons. Baseball bats. You name it.
Yeah.
And it was like, so you had your shields and you had your cord, like your full riot set up. Like you had your snatch and grab, so you'd have your shields and they'd separate. You go out, you grab someone that's causing you, pull them in through the middle of the shields, and it was just full on.
Yeah.
And I remember being on a flank, and this bloke Dav, I think it was Dav Jones. Back in the day, I wouldn't say I was liked the most, and he had this big stick, and he just come in from the side, and he's just wailed on me, and I just remember my leg just getting hit by this stick. I'm like, oh my God, it was just so much pain. But it didn't break, but like, it's like getting hit by a truck. And yeah, it just went nuts. It was just crazy. So then, we did the Olympics alongside of doing our 16 weeks program to prepare or go into possible probables. So it went into 3 different categories. Like, no, you're not at the standard, both educational wise and physically. You're just not going to be at the standard, especially with the 3.2.
Yep.
Then it was possible probables, which is where I went into because I was only struggling at the marching and the 3.2. And then there was the definites, as in like you're ready to go on selection, which was like the Cam Bairds, the Dave Parkers, and they were 18, 19.
That's people listening. Like that is most 18 and 19-year-olds aren't. They're not there. Like that's.
Well, Betty's story's so unique. And many people talk about Cam's Bear, but putting it into perspective of, our journey that we went through at the time, Betty was probably one of the top 3, not recruits, what do you call them when they go into, like the AFL have a...
Oh, the draft. Yeah.
Yeah, so, and I think he broke his arm or his leg, and they didn't draft him. And his dad's like, what are you going to do? I'm going to join the army. And like some of his best mates became some of Australia's best AFL players. Like he was a Victorian captain, and he's like, no, I'm going to join the army. And then once that decision was made, that's what Bertie was doing. But doing PT with these people, everything was a competition. Like back in the day, and probably someone's going to hate me for saying this, we used to have this, so once we got separated into different companies, so Charlie Company, then the possible probables, that's when I went off to do, so advanced training for me was my heavy weapons course, so DFSW. So I went and did that in 2000 with Dave, and because he got injured on his first selection, and just going around it all. At the time, Alpha Company, which was the guys that were going to get posted out, I think that's how it was, they started a fight club. So the movie with Brad Pitt and all that, I think it was Brad Pitt, the Fight Club. So first night at the Fight Club, you had to fight. And Bertie bashed this dude. And then so we used to live in these lines, but in the lines was a massive corridor, like big room, like maybe 30 metres long. Yeah. And everyone could fit in there. Yeah, if you're rocking up the Fight Club first, you've got to fight. I remember one dude got his jaw broken. It was just, and then he's like, what is going on? And like obviously the head shed just squashed it. Like, hey, this is unacceptable. Like, yeah, you're in the military, and yeah, you're training for this, and it's like the training was so brutal that the warrior mindset was coming out, and all these guys is like, yeah, let's go, fight club, yeah. Like that's just how it was back in the day.
Because that was you as a young fella. You'd had a brush with Cam as well, hadn't you? Not a brush, but you known of him in your athletics sort of thing.
Yeah, 93. I was New South Wales, so I was a New South Wales athletics captain, and he was representing Victoria. So he did, I think, shot put, and I was 100, 200 long jump.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you'd already known of him, and then got...
Well, no, I didn't know of him, but it's just funny how all our paths aligned.
Intertwined and...
Yeah.
And then, yeah, right.
More so from the will to want. And I preach this a lot now to kids that I mentor and, you know, businesses. You've got to have that will to want. You've got to... So I didn't know... I just know I wanted to be the best at something, and I just wanted to be challenged. And I think that's just my childhood and how I was, and yeah, just... That was it. That was me. So
you get fight club's happening, and then you're in the regiment, and then you. So what happens with your first selection? Like what's?
So we've bypassed Timor.
Oh right, sorry. No,
no, that's all right.
We'll go to Timor.
Okay, so obviously we'll go back to the 16-weeker because I've sort of bypassed that as well.
Yeah.
I only got to 12 weeks. And then what they did for the final 4 weeks was like, okay, you guys are ready. Now we're just going to finish this off. And then I got back squatted to the next guys that were coming in. And then I just linked in with them, and, you know, more is more. And I preach that now, which sort of takes away that unknown. So I just did more. So, you know, some mornings were back-to-back 3.2s. Go again, recover, go again, recover, go again. But that was just conditioning. You know, some days it was, some weeks. You know, I remember one week there we walked 130 Ks. But you're not just walking 130 Ks. What people don't understand, and you're doing that with 28 kilos on your back.
And as you said, you were what, 50-something kilos?
I joined the army at 58 kilos. And then I got to the regiment maybe about 62. So I'm carrying half my body weight for 130 Ks in a week. So that's just a week's prep. That's a week's training. But within that week, so you might do the walk in the morning, and then you might do theory navigation. So then the next week, the 130 Ks was just to condition you to do the navigation. So then once you've done your theory and you've passed all your theory for nav, you'd go out and you'd do multiple navigation legs. So the next week you might only do 50 Ks, but you're stomping through the bush carrying 30 kilos. So,
far out.
And then another one was the resilience training and mindset training. And I remember we were out the back of a range. It was about 15 Ks, and they just had a blown up boat there, and you had to carry it above your head. But so you had to patrol, and obviously being short, I couldn't carry the boat. So they gave me like the machine gun, the 58, which was nearly as tall as me. So I'm carrying this big piece of cold steel while the boys for 15 Ks carry this boat whilst carrying all your marching order. So you got 28 kilos on your back, you got a boat above your head. Like, so I'd be up the front covering and they'd be walking, and it just broke me because I'm like, I can't help them. Even though I'm carrying a 12 kilo, whatever it is, weapon. And then so I'd run around and get them some water, and it was nuts. And I really felt like a bag of shit that day, pardon my French. But you provide different things at different times, and, you know, that really helps you understand value. And then we got to the end of that, and then we put all our stuff down, and then we went and ran 3.2. So it's all about the fatigue and then the resilience. So my pre-selection was definitely harder than my selection.
Yeah, right. And I know you don't say that lightly.
No, because I looked at selection. I'm like, oh, okay, because you've got other people coming now. You've got other people from other regiments. They haven't done that 16-week torture training, resilience, preparation, really. But anyway, that was after Timor. So after not getting selected to go and do selection with Cam and the boys, I was dedicated heavy weapons, and Delta Company was raised for East Timor. So I went to Delta Company as a heavy weapons det. So there were 6 of us. Each company had their own det, so Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. And then we each had our own DFSW debts attached to the companies for their Timor tour.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So what were you doing over in East Timor, and how long was that trip for you? Your first one, like your first trip overseas, what was that like?
Oh, as a 20-year-old, and I turned 21 in Timor.
Yeah, right.
As a 20-year-old, mate, you just living your best life, really.
Live in the moment, yeah.
Yeah. It was very, very enjoyable. We were out all the time. We'd go out to small villages that no one's been to because we had the 2 vehicles. We'd go out to the checkpoints. We'd drop off some stuff for the platoons that were stuck out at some of these checkpoints. You're like, okay, thank God that's not me, because I get a hot meal every day. Heavy bellies, mate, you get looked after. I'm back running the shop. So of an afternoon, everyone has a period of time. They've got to do something around the base to be, whether it be clean up or... So I'd run the shop, the canteen, or, and then we'd have a truck come in to duty-free truck that used to drive around.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And you treat yourself because you're earning tax-free dollars.
Just living the life, mate.
Yeah, so we drove around to all these villages and go out to all the forward operating bases, and yeah, it was really good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, right.
I had my mate there, Carlos. He was Portuguese Timorese. So he was just loved, and he could speak the lingo, so we'd get out and we'd go walking. And he wasn't part of heavy weapons, he was part of the platoons. And then, we just, I don't know, it just...
Had a ball.
Yeah, had a ball, yeah.
So, were you in country when 9/11 happened?
I was, yeah.
And, all right, so talk me through that day. And did you think then that we are now going to be involved in our longest war at that point, or just in that moment of that day?
I'll go through the moment and then I'll get into your latter question. I was sitting in the rec hut, just a green 11x11 tent, TV, bring your own chair, and I was just sitting there and I was just watching it, not really thinking of the bigger picture at that stage. I'm like, holy shit, America just got smashed. And then everyone started coming in and we were all watching it, and no one really talked about what's going to happen now. But within days, names had gone up. Counter-terrorism was being spoken of. And within days, like, people were on planes going home because it was right near the end of our deployment. So we got home. So my birthday was the 15th of October. I think we got home 24th maybe of October. So was it 9/11? So was that 4 weeks? Within 1 week, probably 100 guys, so 20 from each company had gone back to prepare for counter-terrorism.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then we all just followed on back.
So for you come back, and recently, as you mentioned, the 3.2. We're going to get into the 3.2 and your love of it. No, I
love it.
You love it now.
No, I love the challenge of it.
Yeah,
right. I always loved every moment of it. I sucked.
Yeah. So, because I recently had Langers on, so one of your former COs, and he said it's like a gut punch. Like it just tests who you are as a 3.2. Just full
you
kit.
got to think about it. It's full uniform, boots, I think in total it was about 8 kilos, 5-minute kilometres.
Fucking hell. Yeah, right.
Yeah, just to pass is 5-minute kilometres. So you've got to get under 5-minute kilometres to pass.
Fucking hell. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
So that, and what, you got 16 minutes to do it?
16 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, and you being, as you've said, being 5'3", you're already, like, that's a challenge.
Yeah, coming back from Timor, I was earmarked, like, I performed well overseas. I was earmarked to do the first selection in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
And the barrier test, which was the 3-day test, which was your 3.2, your 20 clicker, navigation, medic, SIGs. You go through and you do all that. 3.2, I think I ran 18:30.
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
So 2.5 minutes. And it doesn't sound like much, but it's hideous. To be 2.5 minutes, and I was training, but to be 2.5 minutes overtime, it's like, why are you even here? Maybe 30 seconds, and then because you know you've done all the pre-selection, and I'm like, okay, righto, something's got to change. So I went back to... So I was in heavy weapons platoon, so we had our own heavy weapons. I was on my Commando SIG course. They're like, okay, you're going to have to train up. But in between the first selection and the second attempt, I did this 3.2 kilometre sprint session. So I do 2 800s, 1-to-1. So however long it took me, that's your rest.
Mm-hmm.
I do 2 400s, 2 200s, and I think it's 4 100s. So what it did is it helped condition me to have the linear speed across the range, so I can just sprint. Because I'd sprint the 800, I'd sprint. Everything was all about speed and consistency, so that's what it helped me do. So it was the 3.2 broken down into sprinting, and then on that SIG course, they said, hey, by the way, you got 2 hours, you got to be up at the gym. You're on barrier. So the barrier was the precursor to selection. I'm like, what? So I'm like, okay. Which was, in hindsight, really good, because I couldn't get in my own head. I just had to pack all my shit, all my gear, which was filthy, mind you, and I'll get to that story in a minute. Like, everything, you know, you want everything to be pristine, clean. So I just packed all my shit and got up to the gym and then straight into the 3.2. And I just had my boots resoled because, you know, all the marching, running in boots just takes your soles off. And for me, pack marching was, I couldn't walk, I'd always shuffle. And then, so within 2 hours up there running a 3.2, passed by 3 seconds.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, done. Next thing I had to do, because you don't just do that and then that's the end of your day. So from there, you go and do the swim, so which is 400 metres in full uniform, 2 minutes treading water, and 15 minutes to do 400 metres.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, in full uniform. So you're wearing long sleeves.
So you're already feeling heavy in the water.
You have full cams, and they're not thin uniforms, in boots.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so everything, yeah.
So how were you at swimming?
Originally, I was hideous, especially, you know, like, it's quite funny now, you know, I spent 20 years in an amphibious unit. Hideous at Kapuka, hideous at Singleton. And then when I got to Commando, so in between the selections and on the 16-week programs, I had remedial swimming. So they're like, hey, you just got to find your rhythm. So me and another bloke, we'd go up and just learn how to swim. But it wasn't really technique based. It was more so like the instructors or the qualified commandos would be underwater watching, hey, you need to do this better, your kicks are all out of whack. And so instead of spending most of my time on the bottom of the pool, which is what I used to do, I ended up figuring out how to swim and staying on top of the pool.
Yeah, right.
So in full uniform, mind you. So technique is like everything. And then obviously the will to want. But I had no skin because as you're swimming, you'd have your sleeves undone and the water would eventually push your sleeves up. But for me, I was swimming breaststroke. I couldn't swim freestyle. My shoulders were just doot. I just took all the skin off. And you just get used to that, and then that scars up and scar tissue forms, and yeah, so...
Yeah, right. And
then after that, you'd go in, have some dinner, and then you might go and do some... So we're still talking about the barrier test now. Signal revision, and then you go and do your SIGs assessment, and then you do your first aid assessment, or your medic assessment, pardon me, where it's like, CPR, snake bite, fractures, equal, like you do your eye assessment, equal to light, your pearl, and then from there you might go to bed, and then they'll get you up at, oh shit, I remember doing it because I had a beanie on, and I remember going, oh, this is going to, because it was cold, because I did a July selection, so middle of winter in Holsworthy is like 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe -2. So I think we got up at about, I think it was 3, maybe 4. I put a beanie on to start the walk, and your body extrudes all its heat through your extremities, and mine was coming out my head, and I'm like, so the beanie was getting way too hot. Just so many little memories of like learning on the, like, even though it's cold, don't wear a beanie on your walk. Like, let your body do its natural...
It's going to heat up,
yeah.
What you're doing.
And it's... Back then it was 28 Ks with a minimum of 22 Ks in 4 hours, maybe 3 hours 10. Yeah, I think you had to stop at 3 hours 10, but you had to make the minimum. Or if you make 28 in 3 hours 10, which some people did, you got to remember that's 28 Ks carrying, so 28 kilometres carrying 28 kilos, I think.
Yeah, right. Far out.
So,
and this is the barrier test. This isn't even
this
selection.
isn't selection.
Yeah, right.
So they come from everywhere, not just 4AR. So every regiment. Plus I had CDs there, so clearance divers. Yeah, it was just, and that was a barrier to say, okay, you're right to go on.
So for you, as you mentioned, you did the 16-week pre. Did that help and put you in good stead of for the barrier test once you passed the 3.2, and that you were in a good, like you knew what was coming?
Yes, but selection. There is no mates. There's no, I know this DS. It did, because the resilience and the preparation of, I try and preach, with some of the training I do with the kids now, you're trying to get the unknown and make it known by pushing certain limits, and then makes them more comfortable in that space. So definitely, applying methodologies and understanding that I was conditioned correctly and flogged. I'm talking skin off my crutch. Blood would drip down my legs just because I got no skin left there.
Losing
the
soles of your feet and all that.
Yeah. So definitely, yeah.
So let's talk about then you go into selection. How many started and how many finished?
Oh, we had CDs on ours, so 120 maybe, I reckon, started. And maybe, I remember being at the club when we were all finished, because we all went out on that Thursday. Maybe there was 18 Army. There was still like 8 CDs. So what's that? 24, 26?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Out of 100 and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
high attrition rate.
Yeah, massive. Yeah. And selection was that selection definitely wasn't as hard as my pre-selection. But every selection has its merits, and you're in the moment. So, like, we had this English officer come over. He was exchange, and anyone that knows the English, they love to tap, is what they call it. Tabbing, sorry. Which is putting a pack on and running miles. So he'd take us for like 10k speed march, which wasn't a march. It was you'd run the full 10ks.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Far out.
And that full 10ks is again carrying 28 kilos with a weapon. So
you're already in the hurt locker, but you're going into it even more.
Yeah.
Far out, and that's far out. And for you, like as you said, you've alluded to in the podcast that your lead up was harder, but on selection, was demarcation the hardest part? Looking back now,
demarcation. Wow. Well, okay. Putting it into perspective, we're doing a winter selection.
Yep.
You're awake for at least 2 days. Could be longer. You really don't remember. I remember it's quite funny. We went into our platoon harbour. We'd been up all day. I think maybe a day and a half, maybe 2 days. And they're like, "Oh, go and get some sleep." And I'm like, "What?" Actually, no. Before that, we got back that afternoon, and we hadn't eaten in the 2 days, and they had all these pots, and you could see the steam coming out of the pots, and like, "Oh yeah, food," and they had offal, so it was just boiled kidneys. There was no flavouring to it, just boiled kidneys and tongue and oh mate, whatever, like liver, whatever it was, it was just boiled, just like, and like, I remember just pulling out this this big tongue. Like, you don't get to say, "I don't want tongue." You just, whatever you pull out, you pull out. And I remember chewing on this fucking cow's tongue. And I downed it. Some guys just didn't have anything. Yep. And then, which became quite apparent a couple of hours later. Anyway, so I downed this tongue. And then they said, like, "All right, get your head down. You got this amount of time to sleep." And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do whatever they say. And then I think we're probably down for maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours in between there. And then gunfire. Just, let's go. And like waking everyone up, and like you've got to jam your sleeping bag in. You've got to have all your gear ready to go. So under the pump, just getting all this stuff done. And I remember burping. And I'm like, ugh, and I nearly vomited from the smell of my own breath because I just had this awful. I'm like, oh. And then we did another massive big pack march. And then everybody that didn't eat were really struggling. But the amount of energy I got from eating that full, just, what, was it protein or was just next level. And I'm like, thank God I ate that. But like the taste, like, when you're in your mouth and mate, and you haven't brushed your teeth for 3 days, and
you can feel the grit.
And then there's got to be some tongue still left in your mouth, and it's just like, yuck. But like, it was
what
worth
you
it.
Do.
It was so worth it.
Yep.
And then so we got back from there. We lost a couple of guys. I remember we lost one of the Navy officers. But that was, demarcation was next level, and got some funny stories that I'll talk about in demarcation as an instructor, which will blow your mind.
Yeah. So you pass selection, mate, and then you go on to the Rio cycle. And what was that like for you?
Once selection's done, it's quite funny because you think that's the be all and end all, and then like that's done. What's next? And then no one really talks about selection anymore because it's already behind you, which has obviously enabled me further on just to go, okay, what's in front? Not too far ahead. You're always just living in each moment. But very, very enjoyable. And then, being that I finished mid to late 2002, I did a couple of reinforcement courses because our reinforcement cycle at that stage was not start to finish. It was very discombobulated. Do this course, then wait, and then do this course. But Iraq was coming up, and because of my heavy weapons skill set, there was a handful of us that went over to Western Australia and did the Special Forces Heavy Weapons course, which was like the Javelin. And then we came back, literally did some lead-up training, some urban work. Like, I think we did I don't know if we did our urban... Oh, no, I did my urban course in 2004. So even after Iraq, I hadn't even done my urban.
Yeah, right.
But you've done enough within the environment, so you still do that within your lead-up training. And then there was, like, I did heavy weapons, I did, I think, my DEMS course, and a couple of other courses. I can't remember because it was just so... Like,
back to back to back.
Or just do this course before you go to Iraq, then do these courses after you go to Iraq. It was just like, so...
Because what company did you post into?
I posted straight into Bravo Company.
Yep.
So coming from heavy weapons, heavy weapons platoon in op support company, onto selection, into Bravo Company late 02.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then, so as you mentioned, Iraq kicks off in 03.
Yep.
You deployed to the Iraq invasion, and what was that like working alongside the US?
Well, we didn't really do too much with them initially, and actually throughout, because the roles were totally different. There was Bravo. There was a platoon. Only a platoon went over from Bravo Company, and then one of the SAS squadrons. But we didn't go into country until 6 weeks in, maybe.
Yeah.
And then we only spent maybe a couple of weeks in country. And then, so the whole of the commando force went to Al Assad Air Base, which ended up being one of the big air bases within Iraq, captured. That was Saddam's main airfield, which was 9 kilometres by 10 kilometres wide. Yeah, so it was massive. Yep. There was us and an SAS squadron. We went in there, and we had to hotwire cranes and trucks, and they were our QRF vehicles to get around the base. So we had a couple of White Fleet and a couple of patrol vehicles, but not enough to enable flexibility to tasks. So we had to go and get all the vehicles we could, and you're covering 9 by 10 Ks.
Yeah, right.
So you've got a lot to cover. But that was cool, and we go around and you'd be on a patrol around the base. And there'd be Iraqis trying to get in because at this stage a lot of them were starving, and then they'll get in big bags of rice, and so you'd let them get in a bag of rice, but you are not to come back, because friend or foe, they're still Iraqis. What are they doing? Are they probing us to do some intelligence gathering? Are they, and we would drive around and we'd find all the MiGs out in the desert under big cam nets in big holes dug specifically to fit that jet in. Yeah, right. So there was all the jets, none of them were on the airfield, they were all out covered under cam nets, and there's a lot of photos out there of us finding all this stuff and clearing through the airbase itself and then holding the airbase. But I had my best Anzac Day ever that year. I was just talking to a mate the other day, actually, who ended up joining the Canadian Special Forces from Australian Commandos, and now he's back here. He just lives around the corner, actually. And we were just talking the other day about that Anzac Day. Both of us, we spent over 20 years, and that was our best Anzac Day ever. Right. So we had the Australian FA-18 Hornets, or whatever it was that was flyby. I was actually at Stand 2. So I was with the at last post or whatever it is, like you got to bow your head. I was that dude that was paying respects, and everyone else was obviously just standing there watching the service. And it came in at, I reckon it would have been 100 feet, and it nearly blew me over. And then it comes back and does another flyby back, and it nearly blew me over again. I'm like, that is low.
Yeah.
But I couldn't lift my head to see it. So even though I know it was my best Anzac Day, I didn't get to see the flyover. It was still like, you're there with your
there
mates.
in the moment.
Yeah, you're in in Iraq, sitting
Because
there.
how old are you?
I was 22.
Most 22-year-olds.
Yeah, 22. I've invaded Iraq. I'm holding the airfield.
Yeah.
And so we were there for a good couple of weeks, and then we had a couple of Australian historians come in and air mechanics, technicians, and they were looking to take one of the MiGs back to the Australian War Memorial. So we had them come in for a couple of days, and they skull dragged this MiG onto the airstrip, and then for I reckon 5 days they just dismantled this whole MiG. And then at the end of the 5 days, they're like, "Oh, we can't fit it." So they took it all apart. This whole MiG is sitting on this airstrip in pieces, and they just been working 18-hour days, just standing there. Mate, imagine that though, just taking apart a MiG 25, one of Saddam's MiGs, and trying to get it back to the War Memorial. Like, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
I think they took bits and pieces of it.
Yeah.
But I got a MiG-25 helmet.
Right.
And it was... It's now at the Fighter World up at up the bay. I don't know exactly where Fighter World is, but 1974 it was made. It's all in Russian, all the language.
Right.
Yeah. So I donated that to Fighter World.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I've got to give them my story first, and
So did you have any contacts while you were over in Iraq?
No, I didn't. I think the guy, so half of our platoon stayed at the airfield with the SAS, and then the Americans rolled in, and that was phenomenal. And the other half went into Baghdad and secured the new Australian embassy, and they had a contact. Significant, I'm unsure. As contact goes, they got rounds off, but
all stepping stones of what would come later on.
Which was I always think about this, and I think probably why it keeps me so humble is, the journey. Timor itself, no contacts, but the exposure to a deployment. Iraq, working in small teams, going in there, no contacts, but, the severity of it and the working in small teams sort of stepping stone again, and then sort of definitely set me up for my Afghan deployments and further deployments to break down the unknowns, and then making contact that much easier, to be honest. Yeah.
So, and there's a famous photo of you in Iraq too, which
there is. Oh, it's not in Iraq. It's in our base prior to infill. It was a 3-day sandstorm, 72 hours of just sandstorm, and we're out doing our patrols for the day, and I knew that the photographer would be out there, but you couldn't see. I'm talking full-on bull dust sandstorm for 3 days, and I turn around and I see this bloke coming out of this little ditch with this black thing at his face. I'm like, what is that? And I didn't lift my rifle, and it was the photographer, and he's like, and then you can see my mate in the distance, and he's only maybe 20 metres in front of me, but you could barely see him.
Yeah.
And so, you can imagine looking at this photographer running at you with this camera, and I'm like, what is that? It's a photographer coming out, but it was a really good photo once I'd seen it, and then quite funny that, a couple of years later I'm instructing on a selection course, and the candidates have got their shirts off doing something, changing into, and one of my mates just pulls me over and goes, "Bergs, you've got to come and see this. You've got to come." I said, "What is it?" And he gets this candidate to turn around and he goes, "Look at that." And it was a tattoo of myself on his back. And I said, "Do you want me to sign that, mate? Like, someone get me a permanent marker, I'll sign it." And he goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "That's me, mate. You got a tattoo, you're on selection, and your instructor, you have a tattoo of him on your back." Do you know how, wow, that is. Like,
yeah, that's pretty out there, man. Like,
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
good photo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, it is, mate.
Yeah.
It's awesome. And so you come back from so you were over there with Betty and so had a good time over there, and then as you say, it's all leading, it's all stepping stones, and then you come back, and then what's happening in 04?
04 is back in Bravo Company, just slogging away, and then I helped out on my first selection course. I was enemy / demonstration, so I do all the demos for their formations, patrolling techniques, and I had the gun too, so they give me the gun and I'm just running and diving on this concrete and dirt and rocky roads and contact left and giving all the demos the best that I could, and then, you know, playing enemy for them, so I'd probe them at night and probe them. I remember they were in formation and I was the only enemy, and I'd run around to each flank and they couldn't see me, and I was ducking around rocks, and they're like, he's over here, and then they'd turn and contact me and I'd come up behind them again and I'd shoot him from, oh no, he's over here, like, they're over here, and oh, there must be multiple of them, and running around. Anyway, the CO at the time was coming in to give orders to the platoon commanders, and they were in all-round defence in a harbour. And I remember I grabbed my knife, and it was at night, and they're sitting there, they've got Ninox on, and they're scanning their arcs, and I remember just like a Viet Cong, I crawled the whole way into the harbour, and I sat next to the CO, and I said, sir, you're dead. And they were looking at me, and the COs just looked at all the officers going, what the fuck have you guys, like, you've just let this dude in, so I'm an enemy, I've crawled all the way into their harbour, and I stabbed the, well, obviously I didn't stab him, but yeah, I just killed the CO.
That's mad. So what was that like, being that you'd gone through selection, being on the other side of it, and actually helping instruct, and like looking at the guys going, yeah, I was you know, only a couple of years ago, that was where I was. What was that like?
Well, no, I didn't really, you don't get to speak to them back in the day, and even, like, unless you're an instructor, because they've got to maintain a certain level of us and them, and then, you know, you don't want to lose that status quo of, I'm an instructor, you treat me this way. So, and it's funny because, you know, then to 04, that's only 2 years, but I'd already achieved so much and done so much. And in 04, I did my urban course, I did my amphib course. You know, I was back-to-back courses and doing my own thing, and, you know, still so young and living in the moment. But I knew, like, you're value adding by giving them what they need, giving 100% in your demos as if it's real. Like, I was always able to transition mindset wise to, okay, this needs to look real, be real, so act as if it is real, sort of thing. So
train like you fight.
Well, train as you fight. And then that became more apparent as Afghan went on, and then our mindsets changed, our methodologies changed, our verbiage on articulation of certain things would change, which again would just enhance mindset, and then change mindset to think differently about what you're doing. Instead of just shooting a paper target, you're shooting a face, and that face represents the enemy or the threat. So you're not just shooting, don't go and shoot that target. The target verbiage got taken out, go and shoot that threat. That is your threat. You know, so you're just changing mindset wise, which enabled it easier because you've been shooting that threat. So that paper target or that face then becomes real. It's just easy to transition across.
So for you, when you first got to the regiment, and, you know, you're building those capabilities, when you got to the regiment, and then we'll get down to it later on when you left, did you foresee that the capabilities would be growing at the rate that they did? And did you feel when you got to the regiment that, like, you would get to where the regiment got to?
Not until you're in it, and then when you're in it, you're not really thinking about, oh, this is going to do so much good for the regiment, or this is going to develop us. You're just in it. So it's like playing a game of footy, or being an elite athlete where you're in it. you don't know that you're actually providing so much more growth, not only to the sport, but, and the old, I wish I knew then what I know now sort of mentality. But, after we started getting our claws into Afghanistan and then providing real-time end states and execution of task and really finding a rhythm within the battle space and then validating ourselves consistently and remaining humble. I think that's the biggest thing, because you're in it so much. You don't go, oh yeah, we did this, we did that, and that was cool, because the next day you could be humbled, or something can happen, and so you got to, even though you're achieving so much, that's now done. Bookmark it, grow from it, next.
So 04, you're on you're helping out with Rio and selection, and
yep.
05 you deployed to Malaysia. What was happening here?
So just obviously you do interoperabilities with different special forces around the world, and so we went over to Malaysia to work with their special forces, which was quite interesting. Like their facilities were very old, or just old buildings, and it was cool to a degree. So for the first week or so, we just would do demonstrations and then see where their skills are at, and then see where our skills are at, and then show them some of our things that we could show them. But you see them, they have all these little cameras and they have them hidden in their outfits and that, because they're trying to film everything so that they could, intelligent gather. So you've got to understand, even though you're nice and you're talking to them, they're there, they're gathering intelligence on you. So like you see them, no cameras, and no camera, and they put it away, and the button still, you still see the red light. Back in the day in 05, it's like, dude, you're still filming us. So you're really understanding the political ramifications, but yet you've still got to maintain the status quo, and it's like, oh yeah, we're all mates here, sort of thing. But that's when my mate Boydie, he was up on the 3rd level, so 3 stories up, doing an urban assault with them and just watching them and seeing how their techniques and that are. And he went to step back just to get some better observation as they come out of a room, and the railing was missing, and he fell 3 stories and broke his back.
Far out.
But still living, still, everything good to go. He actually came back into the regiment for another, at least, when did he leave? Probably 19. So what's that? 14 years.
Yeah,
he did another 14 years in the regiment. But in 2005, he would have been 23.
Yeah. Okay.
So he was only 17 as we went through Kapuka.
Yeah. Right. Far out. And so he spent a lot of time. So how was that? And did you you guys had to obviously go and help him? And
oh yeah, it was
how was that, mate? Being there, going shit. That's
Well, it
he's
gets
lucky to be alive.
Yeah, it gets sorted out very quickly, and medics come in and they do their bizzo. But I mean, that was only one thing that happened. So we had to parachute in.
Oh right.
Yeah, so we had to parachute in using Malaysian Airlines. And we're out the aerodrome, waiting to get onto this plane, and we've been talking, are these planes safe? Is this, that, and the rest? And I'm standing out with all the other boys, just out and getting a bit of sun because Malaysia was nice and hot, and we watched this fighter jet crash, buzz. I'm like, what is that? It was a fighter jet. No, just sputtered in So your confidence is shot.
Yeah.
And then we go back inside, everyone see that? Oh my God, that was nuts. And then the Malaysians our plane, we need to work on it for a little bit. One of the engines not working right. And it's oh yeah, now it's good to go. And oh. So it's are we going to do this?
Yeah.
Because this was the infill for our final mission.
Rehearsal.
No, for the full mission profile at the end. So we're actually doing a scenario, and it was parachute in. So anyway, they're like, "Are we going to do this?" And then so we get on their bird, and we're doing this, aren't we? Yeah. Anyway, so everyone's like, "Oh, that's all right. You get your Malaysian parachute wings." I'm like, "Okay, cool. You want to put them on my coffin?" So we're like, "Oh shit, okay, all right, we're doing this." So anyway, we parachute in, and we land in this it wasn't even a clear DZ. It was a rice paddy. It was the rice paddy was drenched in water, and the some of the trees on the end were covered in that, like the plastic. That like the I don't know, the banana palms or whatever it was also part of.
So like netting.
Yeah, no, on the plastic on the base of the.
Right.
Yeah, so I remember landing directly in this banana palm plastic. So my ankles are in there, and then like everyone landed in the rice paddy. I'm talking in the middle of this saturated rice paddy. You could have drowned in it.
Yeah.
And we're getting there, and we're all packing up our chutes. I'm like, this is hectic. This is intense. And then next thing you know, all these Malaysian armoured vehicles come rolling in, shooting at us, and like, so we didn't even have time to clear the DZ. So we're just grabbing all our shit, and so I'm the lead scout of the company. So I'm the lead scout of the lead team that is now running with all our gear. Some of the blokes are fully saturated from the rice paddies. We're running, and for hours we just got followed up. And we had to still have a mission at the end of this. So they're following us up with all their armoured vehicles and then on the roads. So we ran up, and then, you know, as the lead scout, you've got to go, and then we end up going into the jungle. So then you've got to lead us through the jungle, and then you've got to cut your way through. And by the time we got to our LUP, which is our lie-up point for the evening, which was at the top of this hill, we start to get to the base of the hill, and we go up a little bit, and then I dropped. I just passed out. I was just so fatigued. And then the boys tied me to a tree. So we're on this hill with a decent articulation to it, and the boys tied me to the tree so I wouldn't roll down the hill. The rest of the platoon went up to the top of the feature to get into the LUP for the night, because that was obviously a secure position where they had the high ground. And then my team and me, with me tied to the tree, stayed down with me, and then they bagged me, which is putting in cannulas, and gave me some fluids throughout the night. And I wake up tied to this tree, and these monkeys jumping from tree to tree. Look, in Malaysia.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck? And the Bergs, you went down hard. You went down real hard last night. I'm like, what are you talking about? So yeah, I ended up being tied to this tree, and
wow.
Yeah, and then I can't remember anything after that. By that I mean obviously the mission went in, and they went and did what they needed to do. Whether or not I was part of that, I can't remember. And then so
then you come back from that, and then pre-rehearsal, mate, for first Afghan trip.
No, so we came back from that, and then Butterworth. So the company went to Butterworth, and I was obviously to be promoted, but to get promotion, you got to go and do your subject courses. So whilst they were in Butterworth living it up for 3 months, I did back-to-back subject courses. So I did my sub 1 for corporal, my sub 2 for corporal, back-to-back. And then when they came back, whilst they were in Butterworth, because it's only a platoon, so in the the first 3 tours to Afghanistan in 2005 and 6 were only commando platoons that would go. So whilst they were in Butterworth, they put together their platoon, and I was supposed to go as a 2IC for my team commander, because that's why I was doing my promotion courses, and they did the manning over there, and if you're not there, you're not seen. If you're not seen, you're not thought of, and if you're not thought of, you're not on the trip. So they came back, and literally at the end of 2005, we're raising Delta Company, you're going to Delta Company. So, I mean, you know, to be part of Bravo Company back in the day, 2002 onwards, 2002, 2003, 2004 and 2005, you know, the baddies and, you know, like really good dudes, all like-minded. We'd all been on the journey for, you know, since 2000 together. So that's 5 years together. And then some of us went to Delta, but then some of the guys from Charlie went to Delta, some of the guys from Alpha Company. So literally when you're building a new company, that's where you know, that they just grabbed all the... So I went there as a senior digger to go to Afghanistan in 2006 as part of Delta Company.
So what... Was that a bit of a kick in the guts for you because you established yourself at Bravo, but what was your mindset around? All right, now I'm in Delta. Like, what was?
I didn't really think about it. You don't really have the time to sit and ponder because it balls to the wall. You're like, okay, let's train. Let's build up our capacity. You got to build new teams. So then you got to have continuity in your team. So you're spending weeks out bush or weeks doing drills, vehicle drills. We really did not have time to think about it because Alpha Company had already been over. Bravo Company went over, and then we were next to go. So, we were doing our pre-deployment training, and I was a senior digger, and then one of the 2ICs stuffed up, which is a funny story. He was Brett's 2IC, and then, hey, by the way, Bergs, you're now Brett's 2IC, and then, I went over there. So that was pre-deployment. He stuffed up on pre-deployment, so I didn't have any time really to be a 2IC, but when I went to Afghanistan, I was a 2IC.
And you mentioned with Brett Wood, and mate, I've heard so much about him. You were his 2IC. Talk to me about Brett.
Oh, what a human. There's so many, like going over there with Brett, we established ourselves in 06 very early on as a can-do team. And then they started calling us the A-team. Everyone would always hang out in our room. Like back in the day, you'd have little bar fridges with Red Bulls and all your proteins, and then like you'd make your own furniture. So we made this full bar down the centre of our room. So it was like standing height. And then everyone would come in and we'd just stand around there, have an arvo and have a chat. So, everyone wanted to be in our room. And, like you got Geordie McCullum was in that team. You got Matt Parko, who's overseas at the moment, he was in that team. Chris Knight, loose cannon, he was in that team. But another bloke who's still serving, two of them actually. I think they're both woes now. We're in that team as well, and then one got moved on when 90 came in because we were too stacked apparently. So we had to give up one of our good dudes for another team. Yeah, but we established ourselves as just a can-do team, and with Brett's leadership, and as a 2IC, I got in and whatever needed to be done, I'd just get it done. But having good, like-minded people, so you might be the 2IC, but your diggers are that capable. You're not babying anyone besides maybe Chris, who was just odd. Like this dude, love him. We stood next to each other in battle, But he'd get up in the middle of the night before we go out on a mission, butt naked, start playing with his gear. So he's sticking his ass around, and everyone rolls over, and there's this bloke with his balls and his ass hanging in you, and he's playing around with his gear and just checking his gear at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's like, dude, we are going to get up in 3 hours. This shit needs to be done. Oh, I'm just like, no. And then Brett would look at me because I'm the 2IC because I manage this shit, and then trying to stop the other boys who will laugh. Like one boy will be laughing because they know the bloke who's sleeping on the bunk beneath him is just like ready to kill this dude. It's like, oh my god, like, wow. Yeah. Right. Like, so managing personalities of alpha males, in an environment where, you're about to go in and bang it in and shoot someone the next day, or, getting a massive contact that you've got to rely on this dude, but yet he's really pissing you off. It's like, wow, how do you do that?
So, was it just the way that Brett did business?
He had the faith, but his ability to do the job, his ability to... the way he lead, the way, like our first contact, 19th of June, which is actually the regiment's birthday, we were sitting there, and the day before we got into our first contact, we'd gone into Chora, and we'd gone through the valley in past Baluchi Pass, and then came up into Chora, and we're just driving the streets as a max show of force. And then one of our sniper vehicles rolled down an embankment into because they they don't have flowing water. They've got to make their own waterways, and so they create their own creeks. It's phenomenal the way that they do it. Anyway, it rolled down into one of them, and one of our snipers got stuck underneath the vehicle, and then we're at the back and Brett's just going about his business as he does. And anyway, like that was the first night I probably could have got into a contact, but we didn't end up shooting only because we're trying to save this dude and get the vehicle out so that, like shootings, there was heaps of Afghanis there with AKs on their roofs, and that they're talking to each other, and
they're bad dudes.
They're bad dudes, especially in Chora.
Mm.
And then the next day, getting into our first contact, we're skull dragging this vehicle back, and we were the lead call sign, so we just by chance, remember we'd already come through this way, and we were going back the safest way possible, dragging a vehicle that was busted, and we pushed up onto this feature just slightly to the right, so that the Bushmaster, which was dragging the vehicle, the SRV, the short reconnaissance vehicle, SRV, so just for the listeners, we just pushed up in our SRVs to provide overwatch so that they had some time to manoeuvre. And when we pushed up there, we looked down to the right and there's like 12, 15 fighting age males with AKs and PKMs and RPGs. And what they were doing is we'd actually countered their ambush. So we'd come up there, they were doing their final little prayer or orders group, because they were going to come up and push up onto that feature and hit us from that angle. So we just ended up just on dusk, so that's about right. Either early morning sun up or last light, so that gives them about an hour and a half of gunfighting, and then they can just down tools and then go to bed. That's how it would work in Afghanistan.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, so we're there, and we pushed up onto this finger feature, and Brett's like, "Hey, boss, there's guys here with weapons. Can we shoot them?" And then the boss is like, they got weapons. Because obviously our rules of engagement at that stage were very, I wouldn't say loose, but bad dudes would. Who else is going to carry an RPG and RPK and PKMs and AK-47s and be in the same vicinity if they're not there to... Anyway, so the boss didn't even finish saying yes, and Brett's just like unleashed onto these dudes. And I remember I had my laser, because it was just on dusk, so enough to see my laser, and I had the laser on the biggest, tallest bloke I could find. I'm like, all right, if this goes down, I'm getting you. Being a short ass. Yeah. But he had an RPG on his, so you got to think about area weapons. And if your vehicle gets hit by an RPG, you're all gone. So I just, he was on the far left-hand flank, and I remember seeing Brett's laser on the right-hand side, so we were sort of like cross-beaming, and then obviously my gunner, because I was within an SRV, there's the command position, which was mine, which has a Mag 58. The driver, he just has his small arms, and then maybe have the 84 or a Javelin available to him. And then you've got your gunner, which I had the Mark 19, which is the 40mm grenade launcher, automatic grenade launcher on top, and Brett had the 50 cal, so you'd always work in pairs, because they complement each other as weapon systems. Anyway, so Brett fired, I fired, and it was just on from there. And then, so there was 12 to 15 there, and then off to the right-hand flank of that was like a small town or a small village, and then there was roads behind that. So we'd been at it for a couple of hours fighting. It ended up being like 32, I think, fighting age males that were no longer with us after that gunfight. But at the back, so we'd been going for hours, and then I remember one of our boys in Brett's car got the Javelin out, and this building where they just kept hitting at us, like it was on fire, but they were in there, and they were just all just small arms coming at our direction from 175 metres, which is not far, especially for AK-47s and any 7.62 weapon systems. So he gets the Javelin out and top attack, and this is the first Javelin we've ever seen. So we're into this maybe about an hour, and he fires this Javelin from 175 metres top attack. And I'm like, oh, the whole battle just stopped. The whole fight, oh, this is sick, look at that. Boom, straight onto this compound. And we're like, oh my God, that was sick. And like, no one's shooting. We're all just like, oh my, high fives. Oh mate, that was awesome. And then ting, ting, ting. Oh shit, they're firing at us
There's
again. Yeah. So they're back at us. Oh, we're straight back into it. So then I'm like, righto. And then over to the far right-hand flank, maybe 300-400 metres away, you see all these cars lined up with their lights on, and they're called in reinforcements.
Oh, right.
So the Taliban had got their reinforcements coming because, the Battle of Chora hadn't happened yet. So you're talking, there's probably hundreds of Taliban in Chora.
How many of you guys are there?
We were only a platoon.
Yeah,
so
right.
30 max, plus snipers. So, about 30 max.
Yeah, right.
So, we'd been at it, and then obviously we got the javelin out, and my driver was javelin qualified, so I had him get ready to shoot the javelin at the other cars, and I said just wait, but they didn't end up coming in. They got called off by the Taliban, said no, don't come in.
Yeah,
They'll get their ass handed to us. So we lost no one, obviously. But for the first gunfight, you're talking decent.
Well, and for you, mate, it's real. Like, this is first time, troops in contact.
I mean, and Geordie McCullum, he was my gunner.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Previous guest on the podcast.
Yeah. So he was my gunner, and he was my Mark 19 gunner, which is, like I said, automatic grenade launcher. And, he was wailing on some of the guys that were moving out of compounds and setting up fire positions within, the green belt, so as if they were going to assault us. And I said, oh, Geordie, just to the slight right, you see those three members, and they're out there, and they've lined up to shoot at us. And Geordie, oh, yeah. First round out of his Mark 19, straight on this dude's chest. I'm like, wow, pink mist. Just destroyed this guy, reduced him, and I'm like, wow, that was awesome. First round, obviously, with Mark 19s, what people forget is they're grenades. So, if you fire 10 grenades, that's 10 grenades you're firing. So you've really got to watch, for an area weapon, 3 grenades is going to cover enough space. So, you got to think about that too, because it's an area weapon.
Oh, yeah.
You're firing 5 grenades at people.
Yeah, right.
So,
for the listener, so when you were there in 06, were you pushing out the bubble? What was the mission profile? What was actually doing for obviously just you seeking out the enemy, or what was happening?
we did a lot of. There wasn't so much key leadership engagement because you got to remember, Ballachora hadn't happened yet, so you got all these bad guys. So we were just doing show of force, presence where we could, and then as much information as we were getting, we would react to intel, and then we would push out. So the SAS squadron took our mortar team, and they went and did a job, and then we'd push into the Chora Valley, try and establish footprints, because some of the FOBs, well, actually none of the FOBs had been established yet. So, when Big Army pushed in, there was none of these forward operating bases. So we had to clear through Chora Valley. So literally we were there as just a fighting force.
Yeah, right.
And then, plenty of it happened. Yeah. So, but yeah, the 19th that was our first big gunfight, and Brett was just very calm. This is all about Brett at the moment. Very calm in his nature, very professional. But he would never micromanage. He'd okay, what's your thoughts on this? So he was the consummate professional. He understood that everyone around him was qualified and had something to offer. So he would always ask the question, but at the end of the day, he makes a decision, and he would always make sure he's at the front. He's always make sure he's the first person in any gunfight. The Battle of Chora, DA Nile.
Yeah, let's talk about
Yeah,
this.
DA Nile. So that was the 19th of June was our first gunfight, and then for Brett's 28th birthday, which was the 9th of July, 9th of June was the first contact, and then the 9th of July was DA Nile. So after Objective Nile. Now, the Canadians had been in our FOB doing some intelligence gathering and preparation for the Battle of Chora. And the precursor to that was Objective Nile was in and around Chora as the orchestrator of, a lot of the fighting forces that were there. So they were doing, JDF2, which is Canadian Special Forces. They were the fighting force, and then they needed a QRF. They said, hey, look, we've prepped this mission. We need a QRF to assist. They went to the SAS. The SAS said, no, we're no one's QRF. And I'm like, okay. You got to think about it. Like, Special Forces, who's going to be a QRF? We are the fighting force, or we're nothing. So the SAS said, no, we're no one's QRF. So then we stuck our hands up. Oh yeah, we'll be a QRF, and it was Brett's birthday on the 9th of July. So we had a Red Bull party. I had 6. I know my mate Bushy, he had 8, and he was like off his head, like shaking. Like, you got to think about 8 Red Bulls in a night before we're going on a mission. Being that we're the QRF as well, like, you're not going to get any sleep, so you know you're going to be awake. But I was walking to the car, and for this particular mission, we were in a Bushmaster. We had 2 Bushmasters, so we had 2 teams in Bushmasters, and then we had 2 teams. So there was 24 of us. So yeah, 2 teams in SRV, so that would have been 4 SRVs, and then we had another command team in a Bushmaster. Ended up being about 24 of us in total. Anyway, so we having this massive Red Bull party. Everyone's just off their heads. Like, we're ready to go. We're up all night. Well, not off our heads, but, we're just like full of beans, ready to go. And we roll out to do this QRF mission, and we roll into our RV. Like, hey, yeah, we're at rendezvous, and we just start rolling through the RV and the form-up point to assist, if required. And we just roll straight through there, and there's heaps of chatter going on the radio and troops in contact, and they were just already straight in contact. So we just rolled straight in onto the job, and then guns were blazing. So we were the third vehicle in, because you had 1 team at the front. So each team within an SRV have 3 members in each SRV. So we were the 3rd vehicle, because the full team at the front. And they were just Mark 19 here and shooting over there, and their 50 cal was going off, and I had 2 gunners out of our front cupola, and so we push up on slight left of where the lead call sign was, so they were facing down a street to the left of them. So to the left of us was just buildings lined out. We came in off this track. To the right was more buildings and some more koala walls. Koala walls are like small mud walls. And they went around like a apple orchard. And then down the road was where the SRV sort of propped itself up, and then maybe 150, 200 metres down was the Canadians in this massive gunfight. And by massive, I mean there ended up being 250, 300 Taliban.
Yeah, right.
This particular night. So we had some of them, so they weren't getting all gunfire. We were getting heaps coming at us. And then the LZ, so the landing zone for the aircraft. So the Canadians had already come in and got into this massive gunfight. They had 1 shot had his thumb shot off, 1 shot in the head, and 1 shot in the arse. And then they lost. So they had one of their Afghani interpreters. He was shot and killed. And then A&A, so they had the partner force there. I think one of them was shot and killed as well. So there was a bit going on. And then the Canadians, after successfully getting Objective Nile, they were extracting. And the only people to come in and get them, to have the balls really to come in and get these guys on a hot HLZ, so by hot I mean all rounds are going everywhere, was the Australian Apaches. The Australian Chinooks. And they were escorted by the Dutch Apaches who were up in the air. So anyway, so the Canadians had been fighting their way out. We're holding the HLZ secure from like a corner of so we can still cover a lot of the angles and area and the fighting force so that they could extract. And then the Chinooks came in, and then they landed on this hot HLZ, but some of the Apaches had already been shot, and the Australian Chinooks landed on, and then the Canadians we can't leave you guys. We can't. I said, well, we can't well, not I didn't say, but our boss was like, well, we can't take you. We don't have enough room to take your whole platoon of Canadian Special Forces in our vehicles. You've got to get on these aircraft. And he goes, mate, you guys are going to get your ass handed to you. He goes, we cannot leave. And he goes, well, the only way you're getting out of here is on those aircraft. Otherwise, you're on foot. And anything could have happened on foot. You know, we could have had mass CAS, you know, plus, you know, you could only imagine. So they get onto these aircraft, and you just see as the aircraft land and the brownout sort of dissipates, and brownout is the dust from the downforce of the rotors. There was just tracer rounds, which is like every fifth round out of a machine gun, typically you can have them as tracer rounds, which then gives you an indication. So if I'm a gunner and I'm shooting at a target, watch my fall of shot at night, you see this tracer round hit the target. That's what a tracer round is designed for. Anyway, the Taliban had tracer round, and there was RPGs going everywhere, tracer round going everywhere. It was just like lit up like a Christmas tree. And then the Aussie Chinooks land on within 30 seconds, a minute. They had the whole Canadian force on, and they just landed straight on. Not one round hit these Chinooks. And these Aussie pilots and that, they, like, no one ever talks about them, but...
Balls of steel, mate.
To come in on a hot HLZ, yeah, we'll go and get them, and they come in and get these Canadians, mate, wow.
And Chinooks don't, like, they're not a fast-moving...
No, they're a big twin rotor.
Slow.
They're a whale.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a whale of the air, but they can move lots of force. So only two of them got a whole platoon out. So, and then not one round apparently. So, and I remember meeting them the next day because we had this massive debrief. But you know, we'll get back into that shortly. I got to, yeah. So the Chinooks, not one round hit. They take off. Canadians have already done all their bizzo, and then we're stuck there. Righto, and then the fire just turned towards us. And I remember this RPG coming in early on, up in the corner. And I remember my mate, Bushy, he's like, oh, I'm hit. And Brett, in his famous crouch, like still in combat mode, just glides through the air, comes running past me. So we've got our Bushmaster here, and there's this little koala wall, and we're shooting, suppressing some enemy over to our far right. And my driver at the time goes, oh, can I get the 84 out? Because he wanted to bunker bust this target. I'm like, yeah, sweet, get that out. And then, so I'm sort of half in contact, as so my body is over the wall with one leg. My right leg was in the firing line, so I had no cover. And then because of the backblast danger area, the BBDA of the 84, you know, which is the 8th loudest man-made noise in the world, like, and it's loud and it hurts and it's got a lot of backblast. I didn't want to be in it. And there's Brett going around. I said, oh, hold up. So Brett goes past. He goes and over to the car where, oh, mate, Bushy thinks he's been hit. I do this, my driver hits this 84 round straight into this bunker. Yeah, sick. And then my gunner comes over, which was Chris, the nudist. He comes over and he's like he's just wailing away, and Brett's like checking out Bushy. But as he gets there, the 84 round, it's fizzing out on the ground, so it didn't actually explode. It just landed, and it's like doing massive donuts. But obviously the rocket side of the 84 round is flicking up rocks, and Bushy thought he got shot or he'd been fragged. So Brett's like, nah, you're good. And he's checked him and blah, blah, blah. And so the gunner in that car, his Mark 19, went down as soon as he got into contact. So he had no weapon. So he's in this turret with his M4, just wailing on people with his handheld grenade launcher. And it was just nuts. It was crazy. Anyway, so we'd done this bunker bust. And then, so we're now in contact and absorbing all the fire from all the Taliban, who have now just moved to engage us, and they're like, you can hear them like, oh yeah, we've got to capture some of these guys, and this is what they're saying over their radios. Let's capture some of these guys and blah blah blah. And so we had, I think Spectre just came on at that stage. So our first Spectre, which is the Spectre gunship, which is a Hercules with a 40mm cannon. 30mm cannon, 40mm grenade.
It's like flying artillery, isn't it?
Yeah, and a 105, and it come on station, and then we've started to come up with a plan, and our lead call sign in ended up being our lead call sign out. So he was our each team has their identifiers. He led us in and led us out with the platoon commander, and he gets his Star of Gallantry on this day. And I think the platoon commander got his MG from this deployment and this mission as well. Crazy, good to go. And we're just looking around, and gets his team, and they start going on. So we hold that position. So Brett's like, oh, we're holding this position so that they could break and start the extraction of our call sign. So we're there, we're just copping rounds, and we're fighting, and it's hard to, they're like running at you like zombies. Like, there's that many of them. And it's like you're just picking off what you can, and you're still trying to maintain, because if you just get into that gunfight, you forget about that you've actually got to get in the car and move. So we would get in, get out, get in, get out, and we just keep manoeuvring and using pepper potting, using the vehicle as the pepper pot, so we're not actually manoeuvring out of contact on foot. We'd get out, we'd shoot, we would kill as many as we possibly can. We would start dominating the gunfight so that their fire would minimise. We'd get back in the vehicle, we'd follow on. So you've got to stay connected to every vehicle, because, for the next 5 hours, we were surrounded by up to 250, 300 Taliban. So it's more than 10 to 1.
Yeah, this is like Second World War, First World War battles. Long Tan comes to mind. Yeah, far
and
out.
It's the same but different, because it's different scenarios, different mindset, just different cultures. But yes, 10 to 1. 10 to 1 for 5 hours. We had superior air support. Without that superior air support, who knows what would have happened. They were flanking us, they were setting up gun positions on us. They had RPGs, and they were just bouncing off our vehicles, and it was just nuts. And then this is really the first time that I'm like, okay, I'm a 2IC. My roles are different. I need to do CAS and ammo. I need to make sure that we've got enough ammo that if we're here for 2 days, that we can survive. So you don't want, so you got to start minimising. Even though we've got a vehicle which is full of ammo, that can go, because you can become very flippant with your ammo, going, oh, we've got heaps of it and we need to use it. But, so as we start going, and Winchester, the first Spectre, so by Winchester I mean no ammo left. Then the second Spectre comes on station, that first Spectre goes back, rebombs. Second Spectre comes on, and we call it the hand of God. He just starts spotting targets for us, and he's shooting targets as well. And he goes, oh yeah, mass numbers are forming up here, because obviously they've got their technologies that can articulate where certain enemies are, where they're forming, and just watch this way, maybe you want to turn left here, and they sort of help guide us out as well as give us covering fire, and so then he goes Winchester, and he goes, guys, I'm out again. And then the next one, I don't know if it was the first one, I don't know how many Spectres were in country, but the third Spectre comes on, and he's just wailing on targets. And then his hand of God is even closer, because the numbers are just, obviously they're shrinking there to surround us. And he's just watch this position, and he just guts his hand of God. And because there's so much dust from so many rounds, brownout wasn't just happening It was just crazy because you couldn't see, because there's so much dust from rounds striking absolutely everywhere that you just couldn't see that far. So you had to, the hand of God had come down from the aircraft and spot these guys, and then you start whaling on the top of that compound, and then you'd be able to manoeuvre, because that's the position that's stopping you from manoeuvring. And then the front call sign, they've debussed, so they've gotten out of their vehicles and their cars. You just see the ting, 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 and they're just heads down, and they're laying down next to their cars, and they're trying to shoot this position. And so we get out of our car. Brett takes 3 people to the right-hand side as we debus, and I take my guys to the left. So we just literally take our vehicle. So if we're in our 3-man vehicles, we just take, they're our guys we work with. And then I remember getting out of the back of the Bushmaster, and my mate goes, where do we go? What are we using for cover? And there were these trees, maybe the size of your leg, so they're not really going to hide anything. Just use the trees. And we just started pepper potting up, and then we start whaling on a couple of positions here and there, and it's like, that the trees are not going to do anything for you, but you need to give them that peace of mind that, hey, that's my tactical decision, let's use the trees. Maybe it may shield our manoeuvre. And then we go up there and we start whaling, and then Brett's like, yeah, we're going to get back in the car because we don't want to get separated. So then we fight back to the car, and then as I'm the 2IC, so I'm always last one in the car because I've got to count everyone in. So my 2 boys get in, I'm at the back door, and then the gunner comes in and he's on instant in the shoulder, like just being in a gunfight. And I'm like, what are you fucking doing? Your weapon's on instant at my head. So he gets in the car, and he starts apologising. I said, bro, don't worry about it, we're in contact, we'll talk about this later. I don't think we ever spoke about it again, to be honest, because fog of war, everything happening. And then the boys are out of the cupola, out of the turrets. Well, there's no weapons up there, so they're just like, holes they could jump up out of and shoot out of. And then I wanted to get up there again, and I'm like, no, I'm the 2IC. So then I just really start managing the ammunition again, and he's maintaining connection, because he's in the front seat with the driver to the vehicles at the front. And then, I'm out the window, like just looking out the window, which is bulletproof, thank God, and just giving target indications, pulling on his pant leg, Geordie, slight left. See that guy moving right to left, where, boom, one round just drops this dude, and I'm like, oh my God, that is amazing. Well, okay, I'm talking about reducing and killing a human, but we're in a gunfight for our life.
But this is context.
Putting
it into context.
Yeah,
this is your job. This is what you're over there to do.
Yeah.
You're taking bad guys off the face of this earth that were going to harm.
Well, they were hoping to capture us and behead us in front of the world.
Yeah.
So
you're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and he whales this guy one round. I'm like, that is amazing. Like, oh my God, Geordie, like, that is like some serious soldiering right there. It's a buzz. Oh, yep, you got him. Next target. It's like, and then so we're talking about fighting out now. So we're probably about 2.5, 3 hours in to fighting out, and then we start getting out a little bit to the open, and then you see all this cattle out to the right-hand side, and then you see all these dudes running in the cattle, trying to use the cattle to get closer to our position to ambush us. So the boys just start opening up onto to that location. The cows don't, none of the sheep move, nothing. They're just so used to this, like they're battle hardened cattle. You know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy. So yeah, they get those guys, and then the lead call sign, like, he drives over this gun position with guys still in it and just drops a grenade straight into it and just keeps driving. Like, there was, and then like the RPG started bouncing off our cars again, and the Taliban were running through our position, through our vehicles, and it was just nuts. It was just everywhere, like, so then we get to an open, we're in our last stretch now, and the sun's starting to come up. So we went in there the night before. We helped the Canadians get out for the first couple of hours, and then we just fought our way out for the next. So probably from about midnight, 1 o'clock, we just started fighting our way out, and So you're the role of your driver, like obviously to get yous out, and they were from 6RAR, and Buddha, who was our driver, he'd be close to 6 foot. and he was about 6 foot wide. He was a man mountain.
Yeah.
And he had to be in the driver's seat, so that's not much room in these Bushmasters. Anyway, he had his little portal out to the side, which you could open and you could communicate for admin reasons or pass something in and out. He'd have his little Browning out there just shooting his pistol while he's still driving, trying to... Like, that's how close the enemy were. He had his pistol out there, like...
Out.
He'd just empty mags and reload, and it's funny, but it's not funny.
Because is it true that they weren't allowed to engage in?
No, well, their job was to drive.
That's it.
They were there as our drivers. If they had to debus and get into a gunfight, of course they would. They're still grunts.
Yeah,
they're still capable of doing what's required, but. Their job was to drive those Bushmasters and make sure that we stayed connected to the rest of the call sign because the Taliban wanted us dead.
Yeah, right. So you're coming out, and then what's happening next?
So obviously the cattle, we got all of those guys, and they really started to thin out. And then we get out of the gunfight, a little bit trailing. There's a little bit, firing from the distance now, and then we see just a dust cloud coming towards us, and it was the SAS. They ended up being our QRF, and it was just on daybreak. So we'd been going all through the night, and then they go into a harbour position, which is set up all around a fence, and we just marry up with them. We've been skull dragging vehicles, our cars have been shot to pieces. We just got it was crazy. And then I remember the boys. I said, "Boys, look, the regiment are here. Act professional when you get out, blah, blah, blah." I was probably the one, because I tried to take the edge off as I got out, and I said, it's a good day, nice day, nice weather, and they didn't say anything to us. They were just looking at us, because they'd been watching it, because we were that close to the base that they were all standing on roofs watching this, hand of God, the gunfight, the surround, and then they could hear it, because they're obviously on the radios listening to the whole gunfight as well. So, the RSM that was back at base, he had I think 10 body bags ready to go. So he thought that we were going to lose mass CAS. Yeah. And so that when we roll back into the base and we do a head count and everything's good to go, no wounded, no CAS, just vehicles. Everyone's like, no way. That was crazy. And I think we ended up killing, 150 Taliban.
Far out.
That's...
Give or take.
Give or take,
yeah.
Sure. We sent 3 Spectre gunships, Winchester. It's just crazy.
How was your ammo at the end?
Really good, actually. I remember when we got out of the vehicle, when we met up with SAS, and I opened up the door and it was probably about 2 inches of brass. And it just started rolling out, and I'm like, wow, some serious, gunfighting going on.
Yeah.
And the ammunition that was in the cars was all in magazines, so we'd already had it pre-prepped. So we didn't use anything that was on our front or anything that was on our person. We just used the magazines that were in the car, because if we had to debus and our car was gone, at least we were fighting hand-to-hand with full ammo.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah.
So you come back from that, and at that point, that's your training kicking, isn't it? What you're doing. Did you fear at all? Did you fear this could be it, or
no?
Not in the moment.
Not in the slightest.
Right.
And I don't mean that, and I don't say that arrogantly. Just not in the slightest. It's not in your thought process, and you're in the moment. You're not even if I do this, you just... someone was saying it the other day, you never even, think of your family whilst you're in Afghanistan, because you don't want that to weaken your resolve. Or, in 06, I used to ring home all the time, because I'd always separate myself, and then once I've made that conversation, I'm back into business. And then in my later deployments, I called home less and less, because I had more children, so I'd have more that I didn't want to think about, so I just didn't engage.
That mindset, that's hard, man.
Yeah, but it's the warrior mindset. It's
You're fighting for your mates next to you. That's what you're fighting for. You're on mission.
You're just in the moment on mission. Mission is paramount. Success has to happen, and that's it. And you do what you need to do it. But it was funny. We got back, and the next day, because we'd all been sleeping, and we get up just after lunch. We're rebombed, ready to go through our admin, reset, check equipment that has been destroyed, get resupplied all the stuff that we need to do, and then the debrief for the DA. And the room was so packed. The whole of the SAS squadron was in there because they all wanted to hear the back brief, and then and the platoon commander. So they, as a debrief and as it works within certain, so the on the ground combat is done by the senior soldiers, not by the officer. He runs overarching mission and mission control, so he'd brief all that, and then they come in and brief the actions on target and how it all went down, and it was pretty. But we had every bit of brass that was in the AO, and then flown in for this debrief, and then after that, the next day, we had all this media crew come in and get interviewed to tell our stories, and it was just nuts. Nothing else has ever come of it. But that gunfight, and not taking away from any other gunfights, really put 2 Commando, or 4-hour Commando at the time, on the map. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, mate, that is, and like that act, like that contact, and then we'll get into in a minute at Perth. Like those are like that's where the regiment's name was really forged.
Yeah,
like really,
yeah. And only because of the luxury, and I say it's a luxury, that one, there was that many Taliban in those locations to fight, and the rules of there's so many contributing factors. Like each of my rotations, the enemy picture changed, the way that they fought us would change, the amount of numbers would change. So it just all came together, and then the battle for Chora, which is op Perth, that was another big 9 days. Yeah, crazy.
And like to think, like you're saying, like it's 24 blokes against over 100, 200, 300 Taliban, to lose no one.
I know.
Like, mate, that just like you must sit on reflection now and go, how did we not lose anybody?
No, I knowing how active everyone was, no one was cowering. Like, there's no time for it. Like, and if you were cowering, as soon as you got back, you would have been on the next flight back to Australia, because we just can't afford to have, like, and it's not like we dislike you, it's like this is not suited to you. So everyone that was there was robust enough to just do their bit, do their part, and then look to our left, look to our right, have a little bit of a smirk every now. Like, it literally, you're in contact gunfights, and you might see a cheeky smile come from your mate. Like, holy shit, did you see that? It's very crass, and it's very black humour.
But it has to be though.
It does have to be, only because that's how it's bred in. And you talk about Anzac spirit, and you talk about the Anzac way. If you look back at how the Germans perceived the Australians, how the Japanese perceived the Australians, how the Vietnamese, or the Viet Cong, perceived the Australians. Like, we were looked at as almost, and I'm not being arrogant, superhuman soldiers who just got in and got it done. You talk about out in the desert, the what are they? Not the cav, the cav on the horses and the
the light horse.
Light horse. You look at the Australian mentality.
Or Charge of Bathsheba.
Yeah, like, it's just crazy. The crazy the mentality that we have, and then it just continues.
And it absolutely, like, it's, and you just like, I just hearing that story, mate. I'm just sitting across from you, and it's just it's just unreal. Like just what. Like when you join like as you say, like we're talking, throughout the podcast, we've been like the steps, it's stepping you all to this, and then you have your first contact, and then this is the second contact.
This is the second contact. Yeah. Now that I only ever think about it when someone like yourself says that. Yeah, you're right. Like my first contact wasn't a small one. Like it was as close as 200 meters for a couple of hours, where we eliminated 32 odd Taliban. And then we go into our next big one, which was the precursor to Op Perth, which was setting conditions for that operation to actually go ahead. And, so in two gunfights, over 180 Taliban are killed. Just in 2 gunfights alone. And that's the first 2.
Yeah.
And that's not even Op Perth.
That was part 1 of our 3-part episode with former 2nd Commando veteran Craig Hamberger. Join us next week for part 2.
We'd like to thank Tactical Recovery for sponsoring this show. Head on over to tacticalrecovery.com.au and use the code TRUEBLUE for one hell of a discount. Tactical Recovery, magnesium-based muscle care, salty products for sore fuckers. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of True Blue Conversations with your host, Adam Bloom. See you on the front line.